Venus and star blessings. Let's talk about the beautiful, infinite, gorgeous goddess Venus, the deity of love and beauty, harmony, balance, art, love, relationships, friendships, giving, receiving, empathy, compassion. This is all Venus in Pisces, by the way, most of it. Listening. Venus is the art of listening. A lot of people don't realize that. The anatomy of the ear is ruled by Mercury, which is hearing. However, the art of listening corresponds to Venus because true listening is an art. That's why therapists, various kinds of therapists, whose, one of the primary practices is the art of listening as they share and hold space for their clients. So Venus in Pisces is the exalted position for Venus, which basically, in very simple terms, means that Venus is in a very elevated state when she's in the sign of Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. So Venus represents love, but Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, which means it's the ultimate love, if you like, the ultimate truth of love. But then again, if you look at the Venus star point, the Venus star point does hold that frequency and vibration of that highest form of love relative to Venus. Then when you look at Venus more from an exoteric level in a natal chart or even via transit, it speaks to all Venusian things, but that includes the components of life that are, romantic, that desires that we have, which can be based on our own selfish needs and so forth, depending on where Venus is. Then if you look at, Venus esoterically, she rules Gemini, very different system. And by ruling Gemini, she's bringing in she's basically trying to reconcile the world of opposites, which is Gemini, right? The world of duality that we live in, which produces conflict for the most part. And so that's why Venus rules Gemini. In short, in esoteric astrology, she's basically trying to reconcile that split and that division and that conflict. So wherever Venus is, from the point of view of whatever system you are looking at, she's always trying to bring in balance and harmony and unity and love, and blessings and forgiveness and unity, connection, uniting. Venus is the principle of attraction. She is the archetypal divinity or deity that within us acts as an energy that enables us to attract in our life the things that we wish to attract, to experience. Sometimes it's unconsciously, sometimes it's consciously. So Venus, really, like every deity, has many different layers. Now in Pisces, which is where she ingressed into Pisces just a couple of days ago, and I was thinking about this a lot, like really feeling into it. My own placement of Venus is in Pisces. So this is my Venus return, as it will be for many of you. And I love my Venus in Pisces. It's my favorite planet, my favorite deity, and it's my favorite planet in my chart. And Venus is exalted in Pisces. So I feel eternally blessed by this deity, by this goddess, by this divine arrangement that I was born into. It has its shadow sides and its dark sides and its difficult sides, because Venus in Pisces has agony and ecstasy. It's the same coin, but two different faces of the same coin. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that Pisces, which is two fish swimming in opposite directions, bound by a cord, speaks to that component within our psychic structure, that there's a part of us that really is so connected or aware or in tune to a more transcended experience or understanding or feeling about life, about cosmos, about unity, about love, about God, goddess, the essence of everything. There's this very deep, deep, deep inner knowing or understanding or feeling with Venus in Pisces on that level. And then the other fish is the body, you know, the personality, the ego, and that dual nature, right? Because Pisces is a mutable sign, and mutable signs have this dual nature about them. And the ego, body, personality aspect of the two fish is the one that is having the physical lived experience, and perhaps the conflict, you know, the internal conflict of having to have to be here in the physical world, not having to have to, we chose to be here, but these are some of the inner dynamics that can occur, even with the sun in Pisces for that matter, of this, you know, conflict of love, pure love, and the divine source creation to all things, is this magical feeling or sense about something that is unseen, that is not tangible in the physical, but is felt very deeply inside the soul. And the conflict between that and, you know, being here in the physical, and the harshness of the physical reality, the difficulty, the challenges of this life, the dark side of the physical matter, if you like, and so forth. And so there's this, you know, swirling of energy in the Pisces archetype of these two very opposing experiences or dimensions. Venus in Pisces also corresponds to the mystic, mysticism, spiritual values, the need and desire to seek out spiritual values. There's a great word that I came across yesterday, and I just want to bring it up. Let me just find it. It's a Greek word, and the way it's pronounced is zitao or ziteo, and it's spelled in English, it's spelled Z-E-T-E-O, and it's found quite a lot in scriptures, old scriptures and so forth, and it basically means to seek in order to find. It describes an active sort of seeking, and I think Venus in Pisces has that about her. She is seeking to embody and experience, because she remembers something about life or spirit or source or divinity or divinities. She just remembers something so much more beautiful, serene, peaceful, and so forth. On the other hand, there are all these other attributes to Venus in Pisces from an evolutionary perspective. I just would like to read just a couple of statements, and I'll tell you what the book is in a moment, and I do highly recommend this book. All Venus in Pisces people are ultra-sensitive, ultra-sensitive. They feel life in excruciating and exquisite ways. I cannot say, you know, just how much I relate to that. And perhaps because I have so much Aquarius in my chart, and this Venus in Pisces placement, and having this ultra, sensitivity to everything, really. And the Aquarius components bring in, for me, very strongly, matters of justice and fairness and equality. So when things happen in life on the earth that impact the world, that impact countries, cultures, or the collective for that matter, I feel very deeply moved, touched, distressed, bothered, angry, upset, hurt. I feel all these very deep emotions about these sorts of things, which is why I express my voice and concern and love and worry and whatever it is about these things. Hence why I have been speaking up on Palestine during the COVID pandemic, as I like to call it. Again, I spoke very vocally, very strongly in a vocal manner on those issues as well, seeing the inequality and unfairness and lies. This is why I feel compelled to share my feelings and my perspective on these sorts of matters, ultimately because for me, with Venus in Pisces, it comes down to this ultra sensitivity to the witnessing of suffering, right? And, Venus in Pisces and even the Sun in Pisces as well, there's this incredible empathy, right? So true empathy is to step into somebody's shoes relative to their experience and feel it as though you are experiencing it yourself, and sometimes that can be beautiful, and quite often it's excruciating. It's very, very painful. So it's that that deep sort of feeling of another person suffering, or the world suffering, or a group of people suffering. One feels it as though they are going through it themselves. That's why, and it's Jeffrey Wolf Green's book, by the way, that's why he says they feel life in excruciating and exquisite ways. Then he says they are naturally emotionally empathetic to everyone and everything, which is what I was just saying about myself relative to giving a voice to things that are happening on the earth. They may not be affecting my life directly, but they are affecting either a group of people or humanity at large. And so therefore it is affecting me as well. And Pisces is that sign that because of that level of empathy and sensitivity, it cares, it cares about life. It cares about anyone's life, it's a genuine, authentic concern for life, for the sacredness of life. Then he says their psychic structures feel and unconsciously osmose the immediate and overall realities around them. As a result, they unconsciously duplicate the realities of those immediate to them and the realities reflected in the collective consciousness, which again is what I was saying relative to empathy and feeling into somebody else's pain and suffering, whether it's an individual or whether it's the world. That's basically what he's talking about there. This, of course, can overwhelm the Venus in Pisces person who is not rooted in spiritual reality. Now, I am rooted in spiritual reality, and I say that not because I'm trying to pretend to be somebody I'm not. I'm not trying to impress you. I am saying that because this has been really my life journey in this particular incarnation, from the point of view of my for lack of a better word, spiritual seeking, spiritual journey, spiritual experiences, spiritual understanding, really valuing that aspect of life more than anything else. And it is absolutely 100% true for me. Literally since I've been a child, you know, I was never swayed by the material world. I appreciate the material world. And this, what I'm sharing with you, you will relate to it if you have Venus in Pisces for the most part, or even Sun in Pisces to some extent as well. Never swayed by the material world that to the extent where it became my number one priority. My number one priority was always the understanding of the deeper aspects of what everything is about. What's the root meaning to everything? Where does it all go back to? Why am I here? Why are we all here? You know, the deeper questions about life and the sacredness of life and spirit and source and soul. You know, these things have always been a part of my heart and soul's journey in my seeking, literally since I was a child, right? And that's, I think, that's, you know, not everybody who has Venus in Pisces might have that life to that extent, but there will be a seeking of some kind, because here's where the flip side can be explained. But let me just finish this sentence here. So if someone with Venus in Pisces doesn't have that rootedness in their spiritual reality, he says it becomes its own causal factor in feeling confused, disorientated, feeling afraid for no reason, the inner sense of losing it or going crazy, or sudden uprisings of inexplicable emotional states. So it's a very intoxicating, overwhelming experience of the feeling realm, but the feeling realm from the soul, right? The depths of the soul. And so feeling the emotions of everyone and everything around you. You know, Pisces, 12th house Neptune, is the composite of the entire birth chart, the entire will, which means everything and everyone. That's why the Pisces archetype has this extraordinary capacity to tune into the collective unconscious, for better or for worse, consciously or unconsciously. And just a couple of other comments about Venus in Pisces from an evolutionary perspective. He says, as a pre-existing pattern, the Venus in Pisces person has been learning to embrace on an archetypal level a transcendent value system in order to create a sense of ultimate meaning in their life. The evolutionary process leading to this need has been a series of lifetimes in which the individual has experienced a tremendous amount of personal and social disillusionment. This has created a sense of total meaninglessness associated with the temporary values, right? Many individuals with Venus in Pisces have not consciously conceptualized or realized the archetypal intent, which is to embrace a transcendent spiritual value system. This is important to understand because until they do, they will not have a clear and solid sense of who they are, and the experience of disillusionment will continue to occur. Now, I guess another way of framing everything that was said there, and by the way, I'm reading out of this book here, Relationships, Our Essential Needs by Jeffrey Wolf Green. I highly recommend this book. It's basically a book on Venus and Mars, essentially. And there are all these different sections, Venus and Mars through all the signs. There's, let's see what else. Transits of Venus and Venus in the composite chart. There's a whole section of Pluto in the composite chart. There's the Mars-Venus phases, the Mars-Pluto phase. You know, these are, this is really a very rich and valuable source of information that, if you haven't read, will definitely expand your understanding of the goddess Venus and the god Mars from the point of view of relationships and the implications on an evolutionary level. So going back to Venus, so with Venus in Pisces, which is where she is at the moment, all these sorts of themes, you know, can rise within us, can rise in the collective ether. Obviously, you know, it's important to pay attention to where Venus is transiting in your birth chart. So that area of life is activated with Venus in Pisces. Venus is a benefic planet, right? As is Jupiter. They are the two benefics, and Venus is hosting Jupiter's sign in the sign of Pisces. So there's this benefic and benefic energy, if you like. And, you know, Neptune being the higher octave of Pisces brings in the purest form of love. And, you know, at the highest level, this all sounds, you know, fine and dandy. It sounds great, right? Because it's beautiful, because it's intoxicating, because it's inspirational, because it gives us maybe a stronger sense of hope or belief, you know, in what's happening in the world or in life, that there is a bigger meaning, there is a bigger picture, that people do care, that there is, you know, deep concern for what's happening on the planet and things like that, right? And there's the desire that can be activated to want to give during this time. And, you know, it's that is always present within me, because I'm a native with Venus in Pisces, and sometimes my problem is that I give too much, and I have to continuously be very aware of my boundaries. A very important lesson with Pisces planets period, but certainly with Venus in Pisces. But regardless of that, I felt compelled to give something. So I did. I gave a free reading to somebody just the other day, who, you know, just needed a different perspective. And I also have been trying to advocate for certain individuals in Palestine who have, you know, certain GoFundMe pages set up to help them through these horrific times they are going through. And I've donated, you know, myself. So it's the spirit of giving with, hey, Coco, the spirit of giving with Venus in Pisces. And I was thinking about that a lot, because quite often when we are looking at transits, you know, of the planets, and we're looking at, well, what's happening to my chart? Where is this planet going to be? What does it mean? And typically the sentiment behind a lot of that for a lot of us, let's be honest, is, how can I make this work for me? You know, how can I get the best out of this? What can I get out of this? So there's this sentiment of, what can I get, right? But I'm flipping it over, and I'm suggesting that maybe we can think about, what can I give at this time to anybody? It can be the smallest thing to the biggest thing. That depends on you and what you are willing and able and ready to give. And I just would like to throw that in as an underlying inspired connection to this Venus in Pisces, not just thinking about what can I get, but what can I give as well, because Venus is the principle of giving and receiving, right? If you look at the Venus star point pentagram, which has 5 Venus star points on it, you can look at that and superimpose it on your birth chart and see where your 5 Venus star points are, the head of the pentagram being your primary Venus star point. And also you can look at the current transiting Venus star points. It's the same thing as when you're looking at your birth chart. You have the imprint or blueprint of your birth chart, where everything was when you were born. And then subsequently, as you move through life, you look at, well, that everything moves, right? Nothing is static, in other words. So it's the same thing with the Venus pentagram. That too is moving, right? But it moves backwards in the zodiac. like the nodes do. And by the way, my next class is actually on Venus. And because at the moment, I'm doing a 12-week series, and we're up to Venus in our next class, which will be in about a week's time, I think. And in that class, I will be also teaching some things about the Venus star point and the pentagram. So if you haven't done your own research and you don't understand enough about it, if you haven't participated in a Venus webinar that I did a couple of years ago, here's an opportunity for you to jump onto this class if you want to. I'm opening it up to anybody who wants to join. And it will be quite an amazing class because I will bring in basically Babylonian traditional Hellenistic, Babylonian, evolutionary. Those are the four lenses I'll be looking through, and we'll also bring in the Venus star point. So it'll be a big class, and it'll have a lot of useful teachings through it. So reach out if you are interested in that. You can join the class. Okay, so I was just talking about this putting into our minds, or perhaps tuning into this from our heart would be a better way to say it. The understanding that Venus is about giving and receiving, not just receiving, but giving as well. And what I was trying to explain was that if you look at the pentagram in your own chart, or the transiting one, the head of the pentagram will be in a particular sign, and then you'll have a sign over here represented by one arm, another sign over here represented by another arm, and then another sign down here representing one of the legs, because it's the Venus star point is like, it's the human being. It's the head, the two arms, and the legs, right? And so on the right side, you'll have the right foot or arm. And the way to understand it in one particular way is that the head of the pentagram leads everything. That's the leader of your heart. That's what Venus imprinted in you before your birth. And you have a receiving arm and you have a giving arm. You have a receiving leg and you have a giving leg. So can you see that the terms receiving and giving are there embedded in this pentagram, right? In our Venus star points, because that's what Venus is about, giving and receiving. And in Pisces, she has tremendous capacity, enormous capacity to give, and she will receive as well, because she is exalted. And there is a profound benefic quality with Venus in Pisces. So the giving and receiving actually is the same thing. I'm sure you've heard people say, or I'm sure perhaps you've had this experience yourself, that when you give something, when you give it from your heart, there is this really strong sense of satisfaction, right? There's a sense of happiness. Venus rules happiness. There's a sense of feeling really good about it, you know, when you give from your heart. It's when we give from a place that really we have resistance and we don't really want to give it, but we just give it because we feel we have to, or we are obligated to. That's not an authentic, genuine giving. That's a false, fake giving. That's why it doesn't feel good. But when you give from your heart, there's this it's a free giving, because it produces freedom in your heart. You know, it opens you up, it feels good. And Venus in Pisces has that naturally embedded within her. She just naturally wants to give. So it's a spirit of giving, right, through the divinity of Venus at this time. Now she's going to let me just bring up this is the full moon eclipse coming up, actually. And I think what I will do, I was sort of contemplating whether I want to talk about the sun's ingression into Aries today, but maybe I'll come back and do a separate video for Aries season, sun's ingression into Aries, and yeah, lunar eclipse. I think we'll do that. Okay, so Venus. So there she is there at 2 degrees of Pisces. So she's literally only just entered a day or so ago. And as she journeys through Pisces, she will pick up some aspects, because look at what she's heading towards. She's heading, her first aspect will be to Saturn. It'll actually be an interesting thing, because her conjunction to Saturn happens on the 22nd of March. And then literally 2 days later, on the 24th of March, she picks up a sextile to Jupiter. And it's the sextile to Jupiter that I'm really excited about, and is the most favorable, of course, of the two. But let's just look at Saturn conjunct Venus first. Just remember, this is a transit that is perfected on the day, but the energy of that can be open for, you know, a day or so either side of the actual conjunction. So there's a leading up, which is called an applying aspect or an applying conjunction. Then she forms a conjunction on the 22nd of March, and then she starts to move past Saturn, which is called a separating aspect, right? Now, it is usually the applying aspects that are the most potent, and the conjunction being the most potent. And the separating aspect is still significant, and it still can bring up things or show us things, but the potency is separating because Venus is moving away, or any planet for that matter. It's the same principles for any two planets coming together in the conjunction. So my point being that it's only there for a couple of days. That may or may not mean very much to a lot of people. You know, it depends. It depends on where this placement is taking place in your own birth chart. So where is Saturn transiting and moving through at the moment? The truth of the matter is that Saturn and Venus is never a comfortable aspect. It's just not. It's you cannot make it sound or be something that it isn't. We just need to recognize what it is. And Venus will be influenced greatly by Saturn here, right? Because Saturn has the greater power here to a large extent. Even though Venus is exalted, she won't lose her benefic qualities or lose her exaltation, as it were, but there will be, you know, some sort of limitation around those sorts of things that could be proposed to you or felt, right? And that may not be a bad thing, because here's the upside to it. If your experience with this Venus in Pisces is really overwhelming, remember what I said before about Venus being, you know, so ultra sensitive, right? And so empathetic. And Pisces, of course, doesn't work with boundaries. It's not its natural inherent operational mode, right? It's boundless, infinite energy, right? No boundaries. And what does Saturn represent? It represents boundaries. So it could be a really helpful position from that level around those days, where you might just need to rein that Venus in a bit and just get some clarity and get some realistic perspective on certain things in your life, or certain things that you are perceiving, or even certain things that you are feeling. So, you know, on an upside, that's the positive, but, you know, on the downside, it can be moving away from something or separating from something, because Saturn always speaks to some type of separation. Saturn contracts, right? Jupiter expands. So Saturn will, contracting something means you're making it smaller, right? That means it's becoming more limiting, right? It's a withdrawing, right? It's not expanding, right? So we just need to think about the key principles of what these archetypes speak to. So, you know, on that day, there may be any of those things going on, which can be an advantage if you look at it in a very constructive manner. or it can be felt as some type of a difficult lesson that may need to be learnt as well. Saturn is our teacher. Saturn brings lessons to us. He does bring the lessons in a harsh, cold way, but they can be incredibly valuable for our evolution and our growth and our understanding. And I was listening to a podcast that Rob Hand did quite a few years ago, and he said something that I just thought was brilliant, which is a very Sagittarius, Jupiterian way of looking at things. And of course, Rob Hand is a Sagittarius with, I think, Jupiter on the ascendant. So he's very Sag. And he said that no matter what patterns or imprints you were born with in your birth chart, no matter what's going on, there is always a way to find the best possible way to work with the dynamics, the signatures, the aspects, the whatever it is in the chart. There's always a way to work in the most constructive way. That's a very Jupiter and also a very Saturn thing as well. It's Jupiter Sag from the point of view of being optimistic rather than pessimistic and seeing the best in no matter what life, no matter what curveballs get thrown your way, right? And the Saturn part that I think speaks to this statement is that when we take accountability and responsibility and we're looking at something that we are experiencing, and we want to find the best possible way to work with this in a constructive manner, that's taking responsibility, right? It's taking accountability and responsibility, which is Saturn, right? That's why I see Jupiter and Saturn in that statement. So I think it's a wonderful way to, it's a wonderful philosophy, you know, to have about life, period, and about our birth chart, to understand that we chose these patterns. We specifically chose to, you know, have certain experiences and certain lessons and so on and so forth. And if we understand that at a deep soul level, then we don't resist, right? It's the resistance that can bring in really difficult experiences, because we are resisting what we are supposed to be doing. If we stick to the script of our chart, then we are sticking to what our soul wants to live and experience. We are being authentic. We're not resisting it. And that can be said for transits as well that are occurring. So as Venus moves away from Saturn, as I said, she will not form a conjunction to the Sun, because there's no Venus star point coming up in Pisces, right? Sun-Venus conjunction is a Venus star point. The Venus star point in Pisces comes up in, I think it's 20, oh, it's a long way. I think it's 2040, is it? Yeah, it's a while away. But we will get there, you know, at some point, which will be a very important transition on the star wheel, without a doubt, because the Venus star points, we had Venus in Scorpio since the how many years is it? It's been about 120 years, and she transitioned into Libra just last year in October. So now we have a Libra and Venus star point on the wheel. Anyway, I'll leave that aside because that's sort of going into a different direction. The point being that soon enough, we will have two Venus star points on the wheel that are Venus ruled. Venus rules Libra, and Venus is exalted in Pisces. So two Venusian signs on the wheel, I think, is going to make a difference to the world, you know, on the collective plane. Because think about it, we've had two Mars-ruled signs on the wheel, Scorpio and Aries. Aries is still there. Scorpio will come back one more time. soon in a couple of years, I think it is. It'll be the last time. So anyway, sorry, I'm just going into a different direction where I shouldn't be doing that at the moment. I just can't help talking about Venus and, you know, all the different ways of understanding Venus. And I love the Venus star points and I love talking about them. So I guess I just lose myself in the love of talking about those subjects. Okay, so on the 24th of March, Venus picks up the sextile to Jupiter. And this is like, I don't want to, you know, I'm not one of those astrologers, and you'd know that if you follow me. You never see in my descriptions, my titles, this eclipse or this aspect or this whatever is going to change your life. You know, that's just, in my opinion, to make that statement is it's irresponsible, it's ignorant, it's selfish, and it's misleading people, because you can never make that statement as a generic statement and project that onto everyone in the world and say, there you go, this is for everyone. That's absolute BS. But having said that, I will say that a Jupiter sextile Venus in a mutual reception, which is what's happening here, Venus is in Jupiter's sign and Jupiter is in Venus's sign. So that's called a mutual reception. Did I say that right? Jupiter is in Venus's sign, that's right, and Venus is in Jupiter's sign. Sometimes when I'm doing a video, and this must happen to everyone who does videos, because I don't have somebody, to communicate with, I'm just looking at this tiny little dot on the screen up there to make sure that I'm keeping eye contact with you guys so that I'm connecting with you. And I'm speaking and sharing something. It's hard to know everything, every single word that I've said, whereas if I've got someone there, I've got that ability to bounce back, right? Which is Libra. This is pure Aries in the sense of sitting alone and just speaking alone. When I'm sitting with somebody, that's the Libra. You see, that's why Libra is the mirror. It's really interesting. So Venus sextile Jupiter, wonderful, wonderful opportunities can come to many people. I will say many, but I will not say every single person, every single soul. It depends on you. It depends on your chart. It depends on what's going on in your life. It depends on what this activates, in your own birth chart. It depends what sort of condition Jupiter and Venus are in your chart. It depends on so many different things. But as a general, let's just say collective feel, it is a very uplifting type of energy, even if it doesn't change somebody's life, which is more likely the case. It will produce some feelings or a day or two where things feel more hopeful, where something good can happen to you, where you feel more optimistic, where a complete blessing does land on your lap, as it were, where something is given to you. It's the two benefics in a harmonious aspect together in each other's signs. It doesn't get more powerful than that. Sextiles mean opportunities. That's what they speak to. Mutual reception means that these two are sharing, exchanging in this mutual agreement. They are in complete alignment together. There's no resistance, there's no conflict, there's no opposition, there's no, I can't feel you, you can't see me, I can't hear. They're just very totally harmoniously aligned here. And it is the two benefics, and they are called benefics for a reason, because they produce benefic, benevolent benefits, beneficial experiences and situations and conditions. Now, sometimes that can be internally and sometimes that can be externally, or sometimes it can be both. So it's a wonderful passage there. And I'd say mark it in your calendar, tune into it, meditate, however you want to work with this energy. But again, I want to come back to the point that I was making earlier on, which was, try not to just focus on what can I get out of this, but maybe be open to what you can give as well as what you can receive. I think that's a much a truer, selfless and authentic place to connect with spirit and to connect with the universe, because in my opinion, through my observations and personal experience over the years, through the practices of astrology, meditation, prayer, yoga, all these wonderful traditions that I've been very blessed to embark on and explore and embody and embrace throughout virtually my whole life. I've learned so much, but one of the things that I can say I've absolutely learned that is, I think, true, can be true for anybody, is that the more we can be grateful and appreciative of life, our own life and everything around us, the more we can experience that, receive that, and see it as well. It's pretty, in one sense, it's kind of basic 101 psychology from the point of view of, if you're angry and resentful and bitter, you're not going to see opportunities. You're not going to see abundance. You're not going to feel happiness. You're just going to see and feel and experience anger and limitations, right? Wherever you look. So that, therefore, does speak to two very distinct things. One thing being our mindset and our perceptions play a very big part in what we experience, and our ability to come from our heart, open our heart, and express and give and share and feel and understand from the heart produces more of that. It opens us up to more of that. I made another comment yesterday, which I thought was really quite true, because I was just watching this show last night where they were talking about the threat of AI and technology and digital identification and so forth, which has been going on in China for quite some time. Digital identity is nothing new in China. It's been going on for years, actually. But anyway, there's a lot of complex issues and problems there, which of course Pluto and Aquarius will describe a lot of it and activate a lot of it. But there's a lot of fear being pumped out and projected and displaced and forced and coerced and so on and so forth. And I just said something like, it feels pretty obvious to me that the more, and this is relevant to Venus in Pisces, and this is relevant to the Venus-Jupiter aspect, and this is relevant to the distinctions I was trying to draw from in terms of one position being anger, resentment, bitterness, and so forth, and the other position being the complete opposite, right? And where we stand in that is up to us, I'm not saying it's easy, because if a lot of things have happened to you that have been, hurtful and really hard and all of that, it's understandable that one would be angry and so on and so forth. But the point is that if you don't find a way to work through that, release it, forgive it, and move on, you'll never be able to see opportunity and experience opportunity and see blessings and feel happiness, because when you're angry, your energy is stuck and it's contracted. And anger actually repels, it pushes people away. Whereas love, the opposite, you could say, to some extent, because love really has no opposites in its truth, essential expression in its highest form. But love, is an energy that everybody wants, that everybody longs for, that everybody seeks out to find through relationships, through partnerships, through marriage, through friendship, through family, through whatever. Everybody wants to feel love, and everybody wants to feel loved. That's why when we feel love from another, we are naturally going to gravitate to that and be drawn to that. When somebody's radiant, heart, solar, Venusian, Venus star point energy is radiating and beaming, you will be drawn to that. because it brings that sense of, first of all, connection, inclusion, unity, expansion, right? Whereas anger repels, pushes, contracts, limits, and so forth. So what did I say? It feels pretty obvious to me that the more humans disconnect from their heart center, the more AI and technology will take over for the worst. I really feel that that is a fundamental truth that people need to remember, understand, not lose sight of. Look at how much technology has changed the world, changed people's lives for better and for worse. The negative sides they're pretty big negatives, you know, creating this depersonalization with everything, people losing their jobs because computers and technology taking over, not needing humans to do this, that, the other, etc. And it's just escalating and getting worse and worse and worse, right? And I think our spiritual initiation and mission in this process, in this transition, which has its benefits and has an important role to play, otherwise it wouldn't be happening. So it's fine in one way, but I think our duty, our spiritual duty, is to remain aware, right? To remain present with our heart center and not get completely lost and overtaken by the appearances of the power of AI and technology. It doesn't matter how clever and how smart this AI business is, because it is going to be absolutely mind-blowing in terms of what it can do within seconds. It already is, actually, that a human would need months to read this information or find it or download it or whatever. So yeah, there is great benefit in that way, in just extracting information very quickly, deep, you know, expansive information could be from all over the world, right? So there's going to be a lot of benefits in that way. But does an AI have a heart and a soul? And that's all you've got to remember. You know, in healing, in the world of healing, practitioners who practice healing in some kind of way, and that can be astrologers, that can be psychologists, that can be Reiki healers, that can be tarot readers, it can be so many different types of mediums or divination or therapeutic practices, right? In any and all of those, let's say, the one common denominator that comes through any of those divinations or therapies or healing modalities is the fact that it is a human being who has a heart and a soul, hopefully, that is the conduit for that heart-centeredness to come through in that exchange. That's where the power is. It's not so much about the wisdom and the teachings and the pointing to certain information, data, knowledge, you know, whatever it is, all of that is really powerful and really useful. But I can tell you now, in a healing session, but not a straight down the line information session, it's a different thing. But in a healing session, it is the congruence between two people that comes through the heart center that has the most powerful impact and influence in that session. And I can assure you of that because I was a therapist for years and years and years and years. And one of my favorite people on this planet was one of my educators when I was studying psych and so on and so forth, he is the CEO of the Gestalt organization here in Australia. Gestalt is a particular school of thought and teachings that comes from Germany, actually, and is I would say it's more of a alternate, if you could put it that way, type of healing modality. But then again, it's not, because it is taught in mainstream as well. But anyway, Gestalt means whole, holistic. That's actually what it means. Anyway, that guy who was my lecturer for a few of my subjects was the most powerful man, powerful soul um, in just who he was and what he taught us, you know, in the therapeutic practices and when you sit with a client. And I mean, I can't explain it in just a few words, and I'm sidetracking a bit. Sorry for those that are not interested in this. But I'm just trying to emphasize on the point of the power of healing is not because of what somebody knows, it's because of their heart and presence, that authentic heart and presence that they bring into that space. That's the therapeutic component. It's right there in that. So, went off on a tangent there, didn't I? But that's okay. For somebody that might be interesting or useful or important to hear. I was going to talk about Mercury retrograde, but I'm not going to come back and talk about that in another video. Perhaps I'll do the Mercury Aries season combo together and wind it up now with Venus in Pisces. The Mercury retrograde in Aries is going to be really interesting. And also just remember that Mercury goes retrograde 3 times this year, and it happens in the fire triad, the 3 fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sag. So fire is extremely prominent from the messenger god in 2024. And fire is always about inspiration and freedom. So I'm looking forward to unpacking that, perhaps in a couple of days, maybe tomorrow, I'll see. And also the Aries Venus star point, which is one of the Venus star points on the wheel, on the pentagram at the moment, has been activated since Mercury entered Aries, because the Venus star point is, I think it's about 2 degrees of Aries at the moment, moves very, very slowly. Is it 2? It's going to be 2 in 2025, so it's 5 degrees at the moment. So Mercury passed over that a couple of days ago, and then the sun, when it gets into Aries, it's going to pass over that. So anyway, perhaps I'll talk about that when I do Mercury retrograde and Sun in Aries, which is the astrological new year. And that particular day happens to be the National Day of Astrology as well. There is a national day for recognizing astrology, if you didn't know, and it happens to be when the sun enters Aries, which I think is really interesting. So actually, one thing that I want to mention here, and this may speak to you, it may not, I don't know, but we had a Sun-Saturn conjunction, right, couple of weeks ago, and that was a new conjunction between Sun and Saturn. And let me just say something. Yeah, so Saturn, morning star, right? Because it's rising before the sun. So that conjunction that occurred transitioned Saturn into a morning star. But at least in USA, and this might be the case for a lot of other places as well, but I haven't looked at every single continent or country because that would just take too long. Saturn is invisible at the moment still. And Saturn doesn't become visible until the 8th of April. So when Venus and Saturn catch up, Saturn will be invisible. Let's just see. Is that right? Yeah, because it happens on the 22nd of March. That's right. So Saturn will be invisible. And I guess it feels to me that Saturn invisible, you know, we could talk about that for hours, but one thing to take away from that might be that, well, when Saturn gets to Venus, Saturn is invisible in the sky. You can't see Saturn yet. In ancient astrology, in Babylonian, Mesopotamian astrology times, where the birth of astrology comes from, the matter of a planet being visible or invisible is one of the most crucial pieces of information. So Saturn being invisible still, even though he's a morning star, you know, created the conjunction with the sun. So now he's a morning star, he's rising before the sun. He is invisible. He, she, whatever you want to, if you want to ascribe gender. I'm just used to using the gender, you know, to certain planets. So, but for those that have a different preference, will then just transition it in your own mind. Saturn conjunct Venus, Saturn invisible. I think there can be tremendous growth and integration with Saturn invisible, because Saturn is well, it's a lot of things, but it's a diurnal planet. It belongs in the diurnal team relative to sect. It is the planet that corresponds to this conscious construct of reality. It is the backbone in our body. It rules our bones. So it rules the structure of all things. And it is what we integrate or tune into when we're trying to manifest and create things in our life, right? From that physical, tangible, structural point. So Saturn being invisible and also conjunct Venus there, I think there's more of a hidden teaching that can come through. And I would have to say that the hidden teaching here would have to be of spiritual value, because Saturn is in Pisces and Venus is in Pisces. So there can be some very valuable spiritual, deep inner reflections or insights or teachings that can come out of this, because Saturn is invisible, meaning we are being asked to integrate that Saturn internally. And that's very powerful, because for the most part, in the consensus reality, consensus stream of things, most people experience Saturn as coming at them from out there, as it were, because Saturn rules authority, rules laws, norms, etc., pertaining to man-made laws and norms and rules. Natural law, which is of the earth, Gaia, Maya, actually corresponds to Sagittarius, Jupiter, natural law. Anyway, that's another story. But most people experiencing Saturn in the world out there largely means they are projecting Saturn. And when we project Saturn, that's when we experience perhaps more limitations and more frustration, and come up against systems that will feel like we are being blocked or limited. And that's primarily because we haven't integrated Saturn within us so that we are our own authority. Saturn is authority. We can either become our own authority or see the authority out there coming at us. That, you know, that's such a profound, powerful teaching of Saturn for all of us, no matter where Saturn is in your chart and no matter where Saturn is transiting. So, and finally, Venus will catch up with Neptune. Neptune is the higher octave to Venus. So Neptune is the highest form of love in its purest, inherent description, but it very rarely is experienced like that in this physical reality. Because it's, look, I should just do a webinar on Neptune, actually. Well, I am. It's part of one of my classes, actually, in my series. Yeah, so if you want to know more about Neptune, you could maybe check in with me about that class. That's coming up in a few weeks' time. And I will talk deeply about Neptune and its incredible influence, for better or for worse, actually. Neptune is the most difficult energy in the chart. So Venus, Neptune lining up, you know, from the point of view of love, source, divinity, spirit, ecstasy, ecstatic dance. It could be ecstatic dance because Venus is dance, and in Pisces, it's most certainly dance. I'm a dancer, have been my whole life. Venus in Pisces, you know, just I've always moved to rhythm, music. My body just naturally can move. I'm extremely flexible. Those things the goddess, you know, gifted me with. And anyone who has Venus in Pisces would relate to that in some kind of way, at least to music. You know, if you're not a dancer or haven't felt like you can really be, I mean, anyone can dance. It's a movement that is expressed by in Pisces. It's you're feeling the music. See, a dancer, what they produce, whilst there can be, you know, technical components in dancing and technical, you know, training, years of training and, you know, amazing technique and so on and so forth. It is also, and maybe even more so, that place of feeling it. You feel the rhythm, the beat, the music, and your body mirrors that vibration, that feeling, and it's just organic and natural. So anyway, Venus, Neptune, be careful with money scams, things that, you know, seem like oh no, that really can't be right. That's just too good to be true, because it probably is going to be too good to be true. You know, you can have your Venus in Pisces conjunct Neptune in Pisces. You can be so disillusioned, so easily deceived. And Neptune rules glamour, right, at the material plane. Venus can be, you know, material things as well, of course. It's whatever you love, you know. It can be food, sex, clothes, shoes, phones, bags, whatever. It can be a person projecting that onto an individual, seeing them as your goddess, your god. They are so incredible. They're magic. This person is the incarnation of the divine. You can't see anything wrong with this person. There's nothing wrong with anybody, I might just say, but we all have imperfections. That's why we're here. If you were perfect, you wouldn't be here. If I was perfect, I wouldn't be here. There'd be no point. So Neptune, Venus can blur those lines, blur all the boundaries, and see the best in someone or in something, and that might be beautiful and that might be devastating. You have to be really careful. But it is a beautiful, inspired portal of energy, especially in spiritual values and practices. It's the two planets that have to do with love. Venus, Neptune, the higher octave of Venus, the highest, purest form. There can just be a beautiful gift that you feel in your heart that day, in your soul. That might not mean anything to some people. To me, that means everything. That's so beautiful. That's like taking drugs for me, that feeling. By the way, Venus in Pisces, because she so easily attunes to that state of ecstasy because she naturally is sort of living in that state. She's swimming in the cosmic infinite waters, feeling everything, everything. So there's moments of ecstasy, moments of despair. You know, the ecstasy it's not induced by drugs, although it can be. But there's Venus in Pisces has this, she's got this natural drug in her to produce this experience of ecstasy if she wants to. I know, because I've got her there. I'd love to hear it from you guys who have Venus in Pisces. Can you relate to this content, and how do you feel about it, and so forth? And also, yeah, don't forget to be open to receiving and giving, both in the tangible physical and in the unseen realms. This is a big part of Venus's journey in Pisces for all of us. All right, I'm going to wind it up, and I'll see you guys in a few days' time with Aries, the astrological new year, true new year. Mercury retrograde in Aries. That's the placement of my Mercury in Aries and retrograde. So it's kind of interesting for me. I've got some composite of things going on. I've got transiting Neptune on my Venus. So this Venus-Neptune conjunction that's coming up, that's just going to be a mirror of what I've already got going on in my chart. These are interesting connections to make when you're looking at your own chart as well. Because these days where these transits happen, these quicker transits that are mirroring something that's already going on in a bigger way, you know, you've got the micro and the macro thing basically, that it might just accentuate and emphasize these energies even more. And that can be benefic for the most part, but it can also be very tricky when you're talking about Neptune. I've been tricked with Neptune on my Venus the last couple of years. I was completely blindsided by certain individuals, you know, placed them up on a pedestal as though they were the god or the goddess, and I was crushed, really hurt by behaviors that were actually quite deceptive. So yeah, it's just we've got to be careful. We've got to be careful with Neptune. Okay, see you soon. Much love and happy Venus in Pisces. Give, open your heart, give, receive, give, receive, give. Gratitude, appreciation, always.